were talking about where you found inspiration for some of the shows. Any more? We had one about Ed Weinberger.
Oh, Ed was, like I say, colorful. He lived in a baronial house. All of us had apartments. He had lived in a baronial house. Um, he he lived well. He dressed elegantly. He had, he just a kid growing up. His father owned a grocery store, a small grocery store in Philadelphia, and now he just was born to. He loves it. You go to dinner with him, he'd order for you. He's just, just really colorful guy. His girl at the time threw a birthday party for him, a surprise birthday party, not knowing that the idea of a birthday party paralyzes him. And he really didn't let anybody in his house. And the ones who did get in, he ordered out. And it was a fiasco in his life. And he came in the next day. And Ed lived a very great bachelor's life. So he gave us a lot of, stories. And we did exactly that on the show. We did it with Lou Grant. It worked perfectly.
Any more that you can think of? Anything from your own life?
Everything was, there's none that come to mind right now. I mean, if you remind me, I'll know it. But at the time, I think we did 26 shows a year, and, this happened to me this weekend was, and you try and build a story around it. And it could come from anything. That's the fun of it. It's always that the greatest thing about it is you get to come back and do another one next week, and the worst thing about it is that you have to come back.
Were there any shows that you wanted to do but never did or couldn't do?
No.
Let's talk about some of the specific episodes, some of the classic episodes of the series. The first one being Put on a Happy Face. It's Mary's Bad Day.
Well, it was just a great thing to take one of the best-looking women in comedy and make her look miserable. And I think she had a great line in the shows. There are shows that there's a phrase that David Davis came up with, and there's an antithesis to the phrase, and that phrase is, which I now put in the archives, is a Nakamura, and that was because Dave and Lorenzo did a Bob Newhart show, where there was a build-up in the script where there's an Asian guy named Nakamura, and they said Nakamura, and that was supposed to get a laugh, and it didn't. And because of the nature of the script, they knew they were going to say Nakamura 8 more times in that show. They knew it was a runner in the show where when they were in trouble, they'd say Nakamura, and it didn't work the first time. So there's that thing that, you can be on bad footing and repeat something. So on the Mary Tyler Moore Show, I think we had 2 things that usually worked. Mary come into my office from Lou Grant, if we had a story going, usually worked. And every year we did the Teddy Awards, which was our version of the Emmy Awards, and they invariably worked. So one of the Teddy Award stories was Mary not only losing, but having a cold, losing an eyelash. Everything went wrong with her that day. And I think she had a line which said, "I'm usually so pretty." I think she had something like that she said that was great. That was the line of the show.
Another one is Toulouse-Lautrec is one of my favorite artists.
That was an early show. We did it in the first year about Mary. And, this was based on my life. My sister went out with a guy who came over to the house. And when he sat on the chair, he had to sit here because his feet didn't touch the floor. And it was a whole, everybody just not saying, not touching it, no one allowed to mention it. I was a young kid. It was like, he was shorter than I was, and I was a young kid. And that was the basis for that show.
Will Mary Richards go to jail?
Like I say, that was, I think that was our only issue show, and it was happening, at that time, reporters under great pressure to reveal their sources. And Mary went to jail to protect her source, and it was it was great because Lou Grant, just the shows where he showed that everything in him hadn't sold out. He still remembered the newspaper days, and he loved Mary. And her cellmate was a woman named Barbara Colby, who I think probably, I guess you'd say Betty White before she became a regular. And then Barbara Colby getting the biggest laughs of any guest star. She just rocked, and she played a prostitute who was in the cell with Mary, the "what are you in for" joke. and then they built a show around her. She was going to be a key person, I think, on Phyllis, but it was a key person. She was murdered in Los Angeles, and before they could film the pilot. But I remember Barbara just being brilliant with Mary in that show.
Lou dates Mary?
I still don't like one moment in the show. See, all the women told me I was crazy. I saw, these people had been together, I think, at the point for 6 years. They had been through each other's lives. They had been through his divorce. They understood each other. It was a man she looked up to. It was a strong man. It was a great relationship. I said, basically, we're doing Tracy Hepburn with these two. They should have a romance. And all the women were saying, no, you just don't do that, just don't do that. And we never knew what to do when they kissed. It was great leading up to it. And the solution, which I still wish there was a better solution, because everybody knew they didn't want it to be a kiss that worked. But what we did was they both broke up at the notion of having kissed, that it was too silly. And I never liked that solution. But the show was a great show, but I felt we didn't solve that moment.
Do you remember what other
well, if we had anything better, we would have used it. But I just recently have stopped working on that joke.
Once I Had a Secret Love. That's with Lou and Sue Ann.
Oh well, there were explosions of laughter and David Lloyd wrote Sue Ann. It's a guy taken out of Stradivarius. He just wrote that character so brilliantly. And she was wildly promiscuous, and Betty White, so it was sort of a fun marriage of Betty White playing somebody wildly promiscuous, and she kept on hitting on Lou and trying to get him into bed, and finally she won, and that's what that was about. That was one night. I think we had a prop bed. We went into her apartment. We had a prop bed, which was just the, like they always had the bachelor beds at that time, but Sue Ann had a hysterical bed. It did everything, and so. I remember one of the big jokes was Lou realizing that it was a vibrating bed, and the way he played that, it was fun.
Now Betty White wasn't a regular character. Right?
She became a regular, yeah. This.
The dinner party with Johnny Carson.
Oh, I'm so proud of this show. Because, there's some, like the 56 game hitting streak that, this won't be broken. A huge guest star who never guest starred in anything, and we didn't show his face. I just love that story because Ed Weinberger used to be the head writer on the Johnny Carson show. Johnny agreed to do our show, which was huge. It was, I can't, overemphasize that. And we came up with a show that Johnny Carson was coming over to Mary Richards' apartment, and there was a blackout. And he was there, and he was on our stage, and the audience was looking, and the lights were out, and nobody ever saw him, and he was gone when the lights came on, but we heard him.
The last show.
Oh, man. Alan and I used to have this, usually wrote the season opening show, which was a very important show. It got reviewed and everything. And we'd go nuts with the high profile of it. Oh God, man, what if they don't like this one? So we'd have to go through it every year. And then our last show was that experience times a million. Except, all the key writers in the show wrote on this episode. We wrote it as a group, knowing that, the world would be watching. It was one of the most watched shows. It was talked about, editorially. All the newspapers were talking about it. So it was and we came up, I think, with, a solid story that sort of made the series end honestly, and, the part of the series that was about, good people not being valued, and, as broadcast news dwindles, and we had new ownership take over the station, and everybody was fired except Ted. So Ted was staying there, which I think was a good story. And we wrote the show, and it was about farewells. It was. I don't think anybody had done it at that time. Now it's a show everybody wishes because it's what you want to do. You want to do a show about saying farewell with the emotion of doing a last television show that everybody had loved being part of. So we were there early with that idea, and we had people saying goodbye in their own ways, and the show was going pretty well, and it was an emotional week. And Mary, for the second time in the 7 years of the show, said, "I have to talk to you. I'm very troubled about something." Twice in 7 years. And she came up and we had given everybody a speech but her. I don't know why. And we said, oh my God, you're so right. We're so, oh my God, what the hell? You know, the talk about taking somebody for granted. And we gave her a speech. And then the key memorable joke, I mean, there were two things. We came up with the goofy idea of, you know, how to do a sentimental song where it's ironic and not a sentimental song. So we did a World War I song, which really worked. And we all just, you know, we all were doubled over from the responsibility of it and the emotions of the week, you know, just leaving, you know, 7 years, or, you know, we're leaving this job, all of us. So the key joke happened on the stage, you know, during the staging, when we had a physical joke about, you know, they're all crying and they said, who has a tissue? And the tissue box was on a desk, and they're all in this mass hugging each other, and instead of one person getting it, the clump moves over, and it's sort of like a famous joke now. And that was, and it was great. We, you know, it was so, I don't think we kidded ourselves. We went out well. We went out with a terrific show that, you know, that everybody was watching, and it was just, and it was, rather than elation, it was, whew, you know, because to have messed it up would have been really haunt you forever.
So you were happy with me?
Yeah, very happy, yeah. Yeah, and Treva, whose opinion I really value, and I told you how much she cares about everything. I mean, she handed me a note as it was happening with tears in her eyes, and it was like, you know, and that meant as much as, you know, any review ever.
You had mentioned earlier that was the second time Mary Tyler Moore had taken you aside.
I don't remember the first.
Do you have a favorite episode of the Mary Tyler Moore Show?
The show made me laugh, you know, and I have a distinctive laugh, so I'm all over the track. It made me laugh, and it wasn't always the jokes; it was the excellence of the acting. So sometimes the reason people hear my laugh on the track is because sometimes nobody else is laughing, because for some reason somebody doing something great that's not a joke makes me laugh. So the show was sort of joyous in that regard. But I guess the episodes, there are scenes I remember. I loved the Ted Heart Attack show. It was corny and I loved it, and it was sort of great. I loved when he had a heart attack. I loved him getting married. I loved, you know, you know who I'm not mentioning. Oh God, Sue Ann, played by.
Sue Ann?
No, not Sue Ann.
Georgette.
Georgette. Georgia Engel. Yeah, you know, Georgia Engel was a comedy machine. She was a great character. She walked in, she stuck. She was a great addition to the show. She, as much as any actor I've ever worked with, when she's talking, people lean forward, just reaching for her words, because she came with, and it was a unique delivery. And she, you know, so I tended to love her shows. I loved the Mother Show because, you know, it had so much to do with my mother and that kind of stuff. And The First and Last, I guess.
What do you think is the legacy of the Mary Tyler Moore Show?
I don't think there is one. I think, you know, you know, what happened is, you know, legacies can become formulas. You know, I mean, it's, you know, the line between a legacy and a formula is, you know, is so that dividing somebody's life on a situation comedy between work and home, you know, you know, so they said that's what we were doing. But I think, you know, you know, certainly we're part of a tradition of ensemble comedy, but I don't think, I think other people established that legacy, but I think we, you know, we held up our end for a while.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Okay.
And this is the end of part 1.
Okay, great.